other questions I get. So I'll show you how to create a team. It's really easy, and there's different types of teams. There's public teams, private teams. There's also different types of channels underneath teams: public channels, private channels. So to create a team, if you have the permission, which by default everyone does, it's pretty easy to do. You click here down at the bottom, create the team. If there are, you can create or join a team. Let's say there's a public team and I'm not a member of it, I could easily go join it right here. So anything public is going to show up. If I'm going to create a new one, I'll have to do select that. And then there's a newer feature recently from Microsoft is templates, and I can talk about that. So you can either create a team from scratch from an existing group or team, which would automatically add all the individuals. So let's say I have let's say this person is in the IT department. Well, if I don't have an IT team, but there's an existing group, I could go utilize that to create the team and automatically add all the members of it. And then there's also select from a template. So Microsoft tried to get an idea of how people are utilizing teams. And the idea behind this is they're automatically creating different uses for channels for you. So for example, you can, if it's something for project management, managing an event, onboarding employees, help desk, for example, it's automatically going to create different channels that it recommends for those use cases, just versus you having to create them all from scratch. There's a lot of healthcare ones and also manufacturing, retail. So they tried to figure out the different types of industries and how they're utilizing teams. So let's say you have a team and you want to create channels. So again, like we typically recommend doing that as topics or even sub teams, right? So you have the ability to add a channel. You can create the channel here. I'm going to use a really creative one called test, but this is where you can make it, you can set the privacy, standard or private. So when Microsoft first came out, you didn't have this option. Every channel, every single person that's part of that team could see, which was one of the complaints a lot of people had. They finally added the ability for private. So this means that out of this team, I can create a private channel that only a sub group of members are able to see, versus having to create an entirely different team. So let's say that it is the HR team and there's multiple people, but there's a few managers. Well, I could create an HR management team underneath the an HR management channel underneath HR leadership team and add that there. And I could go add somebody easily. So by default, if you create the team or create the channel, you are the owner. And you have a lot of different options with that. So every single feature of teams, I could still probably spend an hour on in depth. You have different permissions though. When you manage the team, you can add a little logo up there if you needed to. You can decide who's an owner. Owners do get different permissions than members. Modify the channels. And what's great is once you have a lot of channels, there might be some that are kind of noise to you. You might not need to follow it as much. Let's say I don't need to know what's going on with reviews or events. I can make it to where it doesn't show up. So it minimizes the list here, so less scroll. And then if you're owners, you can also see some analytics as far as the different apps used, how many meetings are going on, a lot of options there. And then each channel has their own options underneath there. So you could have different owners of different channels. You can limit the general channel. One thing that people aren't as aware of is by default, you can make it to where only owners can post there. So at Center, we have a company-wide channel called General, where it's locked down to owners. Only owners can post there. And the reason being is we want to make that for a general announcements, so it doesn't get lost in a bunch of different communication. So that's really one of the one feature a lot of people aren't as aware of, is that general channel can be used to where you can lock it down for only owners can post there. So that's something we do recommend for larger teams. And then another great thing about it is every single channel also gets an email address. And so this is another feature not as many people are familiar with. So let's say I want to send a company-wide email, but I know not everybody's going to see the email. Well, I can also CC, BCC this channel and post in there as well. And it would show, the email would then show up as a post within the team, and also they'd get it via email. So then nobody can say, hey, I didn't get it. I didn't see it. I'm 300 emails behind. Well, it'll post here, and then it'll also show up as a notification within Teams.